All right, at this time, it's 6:30. I'd like to open the Administrative Services Committee meeting for February 1st. Please call the roll.
Counselor Corodino.
Here.
Counselor McBrearty.
Here.
Counselor Hill.
Here.
Counselor Plunkett.
Here.
Counselor Burge.
I'd like a motion to approve the minutes of committee meeting held January 19th. Counselor Plunkett, Counselor McBrearty.
Counselor Corodino.
Yes.
Counselor McBrearty.
Yes.
Counselor Hill.
Yes.
Counselor Plunkett.
Yes.
Counselor Burge.
Is there any old business to attend to? Seeing none. Item number 1, under communication. The engineering office requests authorization to develop the necessary bid documents to be used to consider future repairs, rehabilitation, relocation, and/or upgrades in response to the frequent flooding of the storm sewer system known as Gardner Creek. Mr. Mayor?
Thank you. So this is a project Councilor Gozick knows quite a bit about, and I think I'll probably let him speak to most of it, but the neighborhood down by Hillside and Utica Street by the new football field for the school district long ago was designated a FEMA floodplain. So it's had flooding issues since whenever that designation was, I think back in the 1970s. So the most notable event, I think, was in the spring of 2019 when we had a torrential downfall coupled with the high water on Lake Ontario and created a really deep pond right in the middle of Utica Street where the car drove in and ended up getting stuck and had to be rescued, right? So there's a lot of factors at play here. Number one, we know that there's 2 large twin pipes that run underneath this area that basically drains the entire upper half of the 5th Ward and 7th Ward and even beyond. Come down these 2 large pipes and ultimately ends up in Lake Ontario. It's a storm water system. So we know that some of the capacity of the pipes has been compromised because of just fill and sand and silt that compiles up into these drains and limits the amount of water that can go through the drains just over time. We know that a big factor contributing to this issue is the higher than average lake levels. So obviously if the water level where the pipe is discharging is higher than the pipe itself, it hinders the ability for the pipe to actually discharge and drain the water into the lake. So that was an issue, and then obviously just being a FEMA floodplain with some of the development that's taken place down there, the geography of the area has changed over time as well. So all of these factors and maybe a few more to a minor degree have contributed to some of this flooding. Now at the end of the day, it's still a designated FEMA floodplain. You're always going to have flooding issues, you always have. But basically the group of neighbors in the area want some sort of relief or some kind of path forward to see what the city will do for them. So after multiple meetings between Councilor Gozick and the group of neighbors, I think I even attended one of the meetings, and even more meetings with the city engineer, Councilor Gozick, and the group of neighbors, we have decided this is the best way forward. And what we're doing tonight basically authorizes the city engineer to go in and do his own study and come up with what the job would look like. So come up with some different options for ultimately the council and the public to consider. To be perfectly honest, I don't think I'm going to be the one making that decision, because it could be as simple as cleaning out drain pipes. It could be, depending on how resolved you actually want the issue, it could be redesigning the entire massive system in the 2 drains and redirecting them to a different port or lifting them up, right? So there's going to be a lot of options. Basically what we're doing tonight is allowing the city engineer to study the situation, come up with a couple different options, try to let the council, whoever it is, know at the time what the best way forward would be. It's obviously going to be an enormous cost, but it'll depend on what the appetite for the Common Council is at that point in time. Now, if he somehow manages to get this study done and develop this job while we're still here, then it'll be a decision that we have to make, and ultimately it'll require some sort of grant funding component. We think if it actually involves either cleaning out the entire system or redirecting the pipes or raising the pipes, it's going to be a multi-million-dollar investment. So that'll be another conversation we'll have to have once the picture becomes a bit more clear.
All right, thank you, Mayor. Counselor Gozick, would you like to
Yes, but thank you.
chime in here?
Yes, the mayor covered quite a bit, and again, we could go on now with all the meetings we held. We probably had about 10 hours worth of meetings, and I'll spare you the details. But again, going back on the background here, the pipe actually part of the New Deal project put in the 1930s. It was cleaned, at least we know, once in the 80s under the, I think it was the Cahill administration. At that point, there weren't a lot of metrics left afterward to show like what was even done. You know, technology between now and then has made quantum leaps. But the last time, and I know you guys have lived different experience, we got a couple of people here tonight that, from the neighborhood down there, and I have a letter from Ted Volkemer, one of the citizens that was affected, and he asked me to read because he couldn't be here tonight. But going back, I know that in 2000, when my father was mayor, he had a study put together by the city engineer, Tony Leota. They looked at it, and he recommended that they clean the pipe out because, as you said, it was inundated. You know, whatever, 2/3 of the pipe. These are big pipes. We're talking like 66 inches. So, you know, giant pipes. And there are other factors, obviously, with the lake levels rising. The discharge point is inundated from originally where it empties out into the lake. And you also got to consider the fact that you have developments that didn't exist when this pipe came in, like the Kingsford Woods. I mean, how many people live out there? When I ran cross country, it was in middle school, like, whatever, 30 years ago, 35 years ago. You had, you know, open woods back there. So there's a whole bunch of things that have compounded the problem. But by and large, we're just here tonight. The citizens who live down there have been diligent about coming to me for the last year and a half, 2 years. I'm asking for something to be done. Nothing was done in 2000. The study was put out by engineer Leota, but the city never acted on it. So here we are tonight. 20 years after that last study, and that's why we're hoping to get our city engineer, Jeff Hinderletter, the opportunity to actually dedicate time to this because of all the numerous projects he works on, being the city engineer and being brand new as well. So at this point, spare you all the other details. I just wanted to share the letter from Ted Volkemer. He asked me to read, him and his wife, Chris. And then we have a couple of people here tonight that wanted to come up and speak that live down there and tell you about their experience. But so here we go. This was a letter Mr. Volkemer wrote January 21st. It was addressed to the city councilors. He says, we've lived at 205 West Albany Street since constructing our home in 1976, 2 years prior to the issuance of the floodplain maps in 1978. And that's what Mayor Barlow alluded to, the FEMA floodplain designation from the 1970s. The previous occurrence of substantial flooding in this area was on June 16th, 2000, when the sewer system was surcharged by stormwater. After that occurrence, the city contracted with Allen Marine Services to perform a visual inspection of the storm sewer system, which found considerable sediment buildup in numerous portions of the sewer that impacted the natural flow of water. And he has in parentheses, half of the pipe was blocked in several locations. In addition to that, the open portion of the storm sewer that transitions across the NRG property was either filled in or modified, hindering the flow of water. Then the city engineer, Mr. Leota, wrote a letter to the mayor stating that the sewer and open channel had to be cleaned and maintained during the calendar year 2001 to alleviate the flooding that occurred in 2000. To this date, nothing has been done to preserve the integrity of the system in an attempt to minimize flooding. And again, that was a report that I'd referenced as well and have a copy of. The most recent occurrence on June 20th, 2019 was a direct result of the lack of maintenance by the city of Oswego and resulted in numerous flooding situations and potential structural damage to houses in the Hillside Avenue area. He says, in addition to the storm sewer surcharging, the sanitary sewer also surcharged on West Albany Street in front of 199 to 201 West Albany Street. And not only blew the storm manhole, but the two sanitary manholes. This also occurred on Hillside Avenue. The entire area was inundated with effluent water, which after lab tests conducted by the City of Oswego Water Department confirmed the presence of E. coli coliform bacteria. This is not acceptable as the sewer system is mandated by the DEC to be separated. This not only is a safety issue, but a considerable health issue, as every residence along with the sports fields at the school district were exposed to this bacteria. Think about whether you want your children or grandchildren playing on these fields and being exposed to this bacteria. The resolution presented by Alderman Gozick needs to be voted on and move forward to allow a determination of the condition of the sewer system and a plan of action developed to help alleviate this from occurring again. In addition, the cross connections from storm sewer to sanitary has to be addressed to determine whether the effluent water, stormwater is transitioning from. Thank you for your time and consideration, Chris and Ted Volkemer. So I appreciate, let me read that. He asked me to read it on behalf of his family, and I know we have a couple other people out here that would like to speak.
Okay, thank you, Counselor. Yeah, at this point, why don't we bring some resident up to speak? Just state your name and your address, if you could, please.
My name is Hunter Giberson. Address is 214 West Utica Street. I've lived down there probably since I was 20 years old. I bought the house down there, and to give you all an idea exactly where I live, where that car where the mayor said it flipped around, I live right there, right next to the school district warehouse. And the water issue down there has gotten worse, progressively worse, over the last couple of years. 2019 flood was absolutely ridiculous down there. Basement flooded with 3 feet of water. Asked for help. You know, it's been an ongoing thing with getting help for us down there. A little background. You can't really have kids down there playing in the yards after this. The sewer, like Mr. Volkemer said, Ted's my neighbor in the backyard. My mother-in-law lives next to Ted. So this area is, you can't really play with out in the yard. There's tampons and maxi pads and applicators all over the ground when this happens. There's other things that come out of the sewer system down there that's been just kind of brushed aside over the years. I've seen some horrific things in front of my mother-in-law's house. Needles coming out of the sanitary system. It's mixed. It's mixed. It's just ridiculous. The other thing is that the floodplain that's existing down there has definitely changed, and it's been a FEMA floodplain since the 70s. The issue with the school district building on there and changing the level of the land is just, we don't know what's gonna happen. And we've asked the city engineer the same thing, and he doesn't really know either. It's a discrepancy in foot. They don't really know what's gonna happen until it happens. The whole idea was to, next to McDonald's, put a retention pond in that the school district tore apart the school district track and was gonna put a retention pond in order to put the stadium in to raise the level of the property by 6 feet. So, doing so, they forget there's a hump there on Buck Boulevard. Buck Boulevard is that hump, and anyone can clearly see the site plans, can see the discrepancy in the water, what's gonna happen. It's gonna be pushed back into our development, into the neighbors that surround me. I'm also a real estate agent. You get a bank to get a loan if you want to try to sell your house. They're not going to allow you to get anybody. This is hurting us financially. I mean, every time this happens, we got to clean up the yards. I still have stuff laying around, wood I can't even use because it was in raw sewage. So that's pretty much, I'm asking you, please, as a citizen, as a taxpayer, understand what we are going through down there and to consider progressing with this plan. Because if not, I mean, we really don't have anything to go back to. It's our homes that we've been here. Most of them have been here for a long time. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to speak?
Hello, I'm Jim Smigelski. I live at 192 West Albany Street. I'm on the same block as Ted and everybody else, the Canales, the Donabellas, the Calderones, Morbidos. I don't think they would mind. They're all in their upper 80s. I'm sure they won't mind me discussing what's going on tonight. I'm quite confident they'd be thrilled for somebody to talk for them because, quite frankly, they're doomed. You know, they can't. You know, they're helpless down there, and the biggest problem is that their kids are inheriting this mess now. And it's the same, I'm in the same situation. We've been down there for 40 years, and I've witnessed, I've been in my basement numerous times with raw sewage and things coming up, and I've asked the city for help along the way, and they just keep refusing and refusing, and I would just hope tonight that maybe we could get something done, because I think it's well overdue, and, but that's about it. I think everybody's got a little handle on everything, and, but, thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. Mayor, did you want to, City Engineer Jeff Hinderletter?
Just as a point of clarification, when it comes to the FEMA floodplain and the school district project, so our local law is what governs the floodplain and development that can occur in it. The school district hired their own engineers, as they're required to show what their plan is in the floodplain. Local law requires that they offset the fill volume with the cut volume. So if you put a pile of so many yards in, you have to take a hole so many yards out. And then on top of that, they have to do what's called a HECRAS study in order to show that this is the same model that FEMA would use, where they actually show what would happen when the design storm hits. And our local law states that they cannot cause that floodplain elevation to change a foot or more, that the change has to be 1 foot or less. And in our minds, we hear that number 1 foot, and we're like, gosh, that's a lot of water. That's a big difference. So what if it's 10 inches? They're okay? Yes. See, when you're doing hydraulic and hydrologic analysis, there's a lot of modeling, there's a lot of assumptions that go in, and so the tolerance is a lot different. They did their analysis initially, and they showed about 1.2 inch difference in the floodplain, which from an engineering perspective is nothing, is zero in their proposal. They are planning on coming to zoning for some changes due to running into contaminated materials, and we're working through that. But just to clarify that the city, on the city's part, the school district has been compliant with our local laws. They have been compliant with my requests and have been cooperative. And while I definitely feel for the homeowners and the residents, and I have been very responsive and trying to be at meetings and discuss these things, I don't want the impression to be that the engineering office has somehow missed what's going on. When the statement is made that the engineer doesn't know what's going to happen, that's true. We don't know. We don't know until the work is done, because then the next requirement that's put on the school district is that they actually have to complete another model and after survey, and at their cost of over $40,000 it will be, amend the FEMA map to redo that entire floodplain due to their changes. And once we see the actual impact of what's occurred, further action can then occur. And so these are the requirements that the city has placed on the school district in order for them to even consider this project. So just so the council is aware, the city has been trying to be a good neighbor, trying to be a good partner at the table with both the school district and find a way forward for these residents. I think this is a logical way to move, to understand where the system's at. It is a big problem, one that probably extends beyond my office's capabilities right now. But this is, I think, a solid first step to try to correct the problem by knowing what's going on.
All right, very good. Any questions from the council for our city engineer? Councilor Gozik?
Oh, not a question. I was remiss earlier. I should have explicitly thanked the city engineer. Mr. Hinderletter has been invaluable. Anytime the residents have asked to meet, he has made himself available to meet with them for hours on end. I mean, we're talking not just for 15 minutes, but for like 2-hour meetings with 10 or 15 people. And I really appreciate the efforts he's made. Without him, we wouldn't be here tonight. So I thank him. I thank Mayor Barlow as well. And I hope the council can find it in their power to pass this and hopefully make this an issue that we address, because it is the city's responsibility to maintain its infrastructure, and there are considerable EHS issues, environmental health safety issues, that are attached to it, so I'm hoping we'll be able to do this. Thank you.
All right. Anybody else in the audience like to speak? Okay. Certainly, our city engineer pointed out that this is the first big step in this project, and I fully support going forward on this myself, and hopefully everybody else will too. But it is the first big step. Okay, if there's no other questions or concerns, can I have a motion, please? Counselor Burridge, Counselor Hill.
Counselor Coردino.
Yes.
Counselor McBroody.
Yes.
Counselor Hill.
Yes.
Counselor Plunkett.
Yes.
Counselor Burridge.
Yes.
Item number 2, Mayor William J. Barlow Jr. requests approval of the low bid submitted by W.D. Malone Trucking in the amount of $2,771,376 for general construction for the International Pier Structural Stabilization Project. Mr. Mayor?
So this is the transformation of what is now known as the International Pier and will be eventually renamed the Cahill Pier. This is a part of the READY projects where we applied for grant funding back in 2019 and received $12.6 million in grant funding from New York State for 2 projects, the elevation and improvements to Wright's Landing Marina and the transformation of the International Pier. What this project specifically does is restabilizes the pier. If you go down to the pier now, we actually sent the team of engineers sent divers down and underwater drones down to understand the structural integrity of the pier, and also did some rock testing, and found that the pier is really unstable and probably in danger of being condemned within 5 to 10 years because of the high water and the wave action and the pressure that the elevated water levels has put on the structure itself. So a big portion of this project will be new sheeting piling all the way around the perimeter of the pier, and will obviously transform the surface of the pier from what is currently a gravel driveway to nowhere into a pedestrian-oriented boardwalk with some green space and seating areas, fire pit areas is an idea that's being tossed around, similar to what we did at Brightbeck Park. And eventually we'll have docks out there like what existed before, where boats can actually come up and get off the docks and enjoy the pier. Obviously it'll be open to the public from land as well. So it's really a continuation of our waterfront improvements. We improved Harbor Trail and made our improvements to Brightbeck Park in 2017 and 18. In 2019 and 2020, you've seen what we've done to Wright's Landing Marina, and now we're just moving east and going to transform this pier. So I think it'll be a great project and a game changer for the waterfront area. If you study other communities with as much waterfront as Oswego, you see that it's the most coveted piece of property, especially if they have a pier reaching out into a harbor. Most communities have a boardwalk or something to get people out there. And of course ours is a vacant driveway that's full of gravel. So we'd like to change that, and it's long overdue to change it. So I want to talk numbers for a moment. We won $12.6 million in grant funding. We also secured some FEMA funds from that emergency declaration due to the high water, and we were able to, all told, put together over $16 million of investment of all grant funding into our waterfront. The 12.6 from the READY was originally divided almost in half. 6.1 was for Wright's Landing, 6.5 was for the International Pier. However, we were able to do the Wright's Landing project in-house with our own DPW, thanks to Tom Kells and the guys at the DPW, and of course Jeff Hinderleiter helping with the engineering side of things. So that has saved us about $3.5 million on what would have been a project that was bid out. You obviously have the payroll for the contractor and some markup, so those prices inflate quickly. So saving in-house saved us, about half the project cost. So we actually have a proposal before the READY Commission to transfer the funds that we saved in Wright's Landing over to the International Pier. We feel confident that that'll be approved because we've justified and demonstrated the need. First of all, we worked hard to realize those savings, but the need at the pier is extreme because the pier itself is in such bad condition, and we know that the project will be extremely expensive. We know we're going to run into massive projects along the way, like the yacht club building. We'll run into more issues once we get digging and open up the ground out there. So having that $9 million and taking what was the $6.5 million project and turning it into a $9 million project will be more in line with reality once we get going. So, and it'll be enough money to actually make a project, complete a project that we can all be proud of. I think sometimes we're used to completing C+ or B- projects around here, and this will certainly be an A+. And as I said, I think it'll be a real game changer for the community. The exact item before you tonight is approving the bid that went out. This bid was publicized for, I believe, about 28 days. It was actually extended out a week because we had a pre-bid meeting and we had a lot of contractors show up. So it was a very competitive bid, and we're going with the low bid, obviously, which is $2.7 million submitted by W.D. Malone. The other bids are in your packet, but for folks in the audience, 2.7 by W.D., who's a local outfit, was low bid. 3.1 million was the next lowest bid, followed by a 3.3 and then a 5.4. So again, we do expect some change orders, of course, because it'll be a complex and difficult project, but it's still under where we thought this bid would come in, which is good. But as I said, once we get going, we think the price may go up with some issues that are bound to pop up. Assuming we approve this tonight and it gets ultimate final approval next Monday, we expect ground to break in late February, early March, where they'll start mobilizing. You'll see some equipment show up. There'll be a whole lot of demo work, and then they'll get to work on actually restabilizing the pier. This project is going to take all of this year, and we broke the International Pier project as a whole into two phases. The first phase is tonight. It's more of the below the ground surface and underwater, restabilizing, restructuring the pier, putting that sheeting in, the tiebacks and whalers. So that'll be phase one. And then phase two is more of the surface work, transforming the surface into a pedestrian-oriented boardwalk. And that the plan as of right now, again, is to do that in-house by the DPW. It saves a bunch of money up front and allows us to be more specific and targeted with our design and what we want to see as a community versus contractors and engineering's designing it. So it'll be a long project. I don't see us getting to phase two until spring of 2022. So it's going to be a while, but it'll be well worth it in the end.
All right, thank you, Mayor. Any questions? Yes, Councilor McBurney.
Mayor, I did have one quick question. Does W.B. Malone have the the experience to do a job like this? I mean, have they done a lot of marine construction?
Well, they'll be the GC. So, I mean, they've done, quite frankly, if you look at a lot of the bids along Lake Ontario that have come because of the ready funds, you'll find that WD got a large majority of them from doing the ports work to our Breakback Riprap project all up and down the shoreline because they have competitive prices and they're one of the few qualified contractors in the immediate area to handle this kind of work and work of this size, scope, and difficulty. So they're definitely qualified, and then obviously their subcontractors are listed and provided when they submit the bid. So, you know, we know that they have a long history of soliciting qualified contractors, because in the end it comes back on them as the GC. Okay. So we're very confident and happy with the bid. We also had Delta Engineers look over the bid, Onondaga Purchasing, obviously, and Jeff Hinderleiter, Tom Kells here with the city looked it all over.
Thank you.
All right, any other council members have any questions for the mayor? Anybody in the public? Seeing none, can I have a motion, please? Councilor Hill, Councilor Burridge.
Counselor Coردino.
Yes.
Counselor McBroody.
Yes.
Counselor Hill.
Yes.
Counselor Plunkett.
Yes.
Counselor Burridge.
Yes.
Item number 3, the Engineering Office requests authorization for Mayor William J. Barlow Jr. to sign the professional services agreement prepared by CEG CME Engineering Group, DPC, for the for construction phase of geothermal services for the International Pier Project in the amount of $49,840. Mr. Mayor?
So this is really just a supplement to item number 2. This is the CEG is a sub of the engineering group Delta that actually helped design and study the pier in the first place. They'll be involved through the geotech services for the duration of the project, especially phase 1. So, this will be funded by the grant money and viewed as part of the project, and it's just part of the engineering services that'll be provided through the project. And obviously, we don't have the equipment or folks here to do this type of geotech servicing.
All right, thank you. Any questions from the council for the mayor? From the public? Seeing none, can I have a motion, please? Counselor Plunkett, Counselor McBrearty.
Counselor Cordino.
Yes.
Counselor McBrearty.
Yes.
Counselor Hill.
Yes.
Counselor Plunkett.
Yes.
Counselor Burge.
Yes.
Item number 4, Mayor William J. Barlow Jr. Requests discussion regarding a bond anticipation note for the stabilization of the International Pier. Mr. Mayor?
So this is a possible bond anticipation note that we may take. We're not totally committed to taking it quite yet. Long story short, grant funding, you have to front the money first and then get reimbursed either as you go or upon completion. The Ready project, luckily, is reimbursed as you go, so we can get some of that money back as it comes in. However, we've won over $40 million in grant funding since 2016. And a lot of this funding requires, like the Complete Streets project, the Pocket Park project, a lot of the Brightbeck Park and Wrights Landing improvement projects from the CFA, require fronting the money, and upon completion, you get reimbursed. And because of the bureaucratic process and COVID didn't help, approvals and reimbursement from the state have slowed, which is really to be expected, going in. It's a long process. But what I'm trying to say, in summary, is we have a lot of money out there to do all the projects we've done in the last 5 years, and we're about to break ground on another approximately $9 million project with the International Pier, and we'd like some cash instead of spending all the city cash and emptying the city coffers. It makes more sense to take a short-term bond anticipation note. Interest rates are extremely low. Debbie Code's been calling around. It looks like this $1.5 million bond anticipation note would be about 1.4% interest around there. So it's very affordable, and it's really a common sense move to go get the funding so that we can pay the contractor as they go, but also the city is taking on ordering the sheet piling and a lot of the materials that are part of the project. We did that to save cost, to avoid markup. So as we place these orders, we'll need cash up front to either pay up front or upon delivery. And rather than me sitting here, every day, all day, worrying if we have, $100,000 to pay the steel order today, it just makes more sense to take this short-term ban at very low interest, set it aside. We can pay for the funds for the project out of that account as we go, and we won't have to worry about city payroll, healthcare payments, making county whole on taxes, and the list goes on and on. So it just makes sense. It's the affordable, common sense thing to do at this point in time. And again, depending on the timeline of the project, we may not even need this. But the rate we're going now, once we make the award to the contractor, their timeline will be more clear. Obviously, we're pushing for a quick groundbreaking to get the project underway as quickly as possible and to make some gains while the weather's it's workable conditions out there now. So it just makes sense to go this way. It's easier for everybody involved. Again, this is money that's reimbursed, as 95% of the International Pier project is. So the money that we're taking for this ban will just be reimbursed from the city, and the interest rate's really low. So it just makes sense logistically.
All right, thank you, Mayor. Any questions for the mayor on this from the council? Public? Well, it sounds like it's a good fiscal decision to, as you said, just in case we need it.
And at the same time, we're trying to reimburse some of the money we have hanging out there. 104 Complete Streets was a $1.1 million project that we have yet to be reimbursed. Water Street Pocket Park, $970,000 project that we haven't been reimbursed. All the improvements we've done, Harbor Trail, Brightbeck Park, Splash Pad, Wrights Landing, it goes on and on. we have yet to be reimbursed for the majority of those funds. Even small grants like Lakeside Park was a $100,000 grant, and we're still trying to get reimbursed for that. So I'm not complaining. It's a good problem to have, I guess, and it's a victim of your own success. But again, just trying to make the easiest process to get this project up and running on time.
All right, very good. Thank you. Can I have a motion, please? Counselor McBurney, Counselor Hill.
Counselor Corodino.
Yes.
Counselor McBrearty.
Yes.
Counselor Hill.
Yes.
Counselor Plunkett.
Yes.
Counselor Burridge.
Yes.
Item number 5, Mayor William J. Barlow Jr. Boy, you're a busy guy here today. Mayor William J. Barlow Jr. seeks favorable consideration by the Common Council to enter into an agreement with Oswego Little League for the use, management, and control of the baseball fields located at the historic Fort Ontario complex. Mr. Mayor.
So this is, should be an easy action by the council. Obviously, Little League has used and occupied those fields for years and years and years. They run a great league, a great program, and take good care of the fields. Usually, city DPW will help get the fields up and running, and then week-to-week maintenance usually relies solely on Miles Becker and the folks at Little League. So they do a great job. We were approached by Little League because they are seeing people step up and want to invest in the facilities. And similar to what we've talked about with the Legends Field complex before, as you get people willing to put their own money or want to spend their own time doing improvements in the field, they like to be assured that the fields will be used for Little League for many years to come. So as opposed to kind of a handshake, informal agreement between the city and Little League, we think it makes sense to actually put pen to paper here and formalize a long-term agreement so that Little League has the confidence and are assured that they'll be playing on those fields for many years to come. And again, I think it's a good location for Little League in our city. I'm not sure where else you would put them. So should something happen down the road with Fort Ontario right there, it makes for a nice complex and a beautiful part of the city for folks who come in from out of town on other teams to see. So it makes sense, and happy to support Little League by doing this.
All right, thank you. Counselor Hill, I know you had some conversations earlier today. Did you want to chime in here?
My concerns related solely to the potential of national park designation for the entire Fort Ontario site and any of the uncertainty surrounding what the federal intended use of the site would be after that designation. So if there is a recommendation by the federal government to change the use of the site, to reorganize, to restructure, what impact this agreement would have on our ability to make the best decision, on behalf of the city for the site as a whole. Because I think the potential of a national park and the substantial economic impact needs to be weighed.
Is that a question for?
Well, Kevin sort of answered it. He had sent an email back saying that the agreement provides for that happening. I had some language we went back and forth with, but there was no response to my last email. So maybe the city attorney could speak to it.
City Attorney Caracoli, up to the plate, as it were.
Nice metaphor. Also, Tim Kerwin, the president of the Oswego Little League, is here as well, and would be happy to answer questions or, give his take on the level of investment over the years that Little League has undertaken at those fields. So, with respect to that issue, it was generally identified in the force majeure, something that happens that the city doesn't have any control over, an act of God, if you will, and in one of those, it dealt with government regulation. And so I think that would be along the lines, but as I noted, I kind of firmed up that language to specifically talk about in the event that the grounds become a federal park and what happens. I liken it similar to the lighthouse, frankly, and how that has been taken over by the federal government and leased back to the city, and then the city leases it to the Maritime Museum. perhaps a little different because it's on land and it could be subject to change, but I think ultimately, I mean, the short answer is that is part of the risk, I suppose, that both the city and Little League take, but I think in your analysis, you even concluded that it's probably not likely that things will change, but
Yeah,
it could.
there's no indication of the way that it would go, or what the recommendation might be on behalf of the federal government. The problem is that the decision to convey the land, in other similar situations has been more of a voluntary than a mandated, requirement. So it would require, my understanding is it will likely require action of the council, and I want to be sure that the agreement doesn't impede our ability to act in a way that's in the best interest of the city.
No, it certainly does. In fact, the charter sets forth, I mean, that this council has the authority over all property. So we're not giving up that,
Right.
The authority to deal with the property. This is simply a management and control agreement between the city and Little League. It does not give away any type of ownership interest in in that property or the facilities themselves. But what it does, and I want to be very clear about this, it does memorialize the level of investment that Little League has made over the years and is proposing to make to make this, as I mentioned, a truly state-of-the-art facility, something that is an attraction to not only central New York, but around the country, frankly. We talk about, Williamsport, and I don't think it's that far-fetched. I mean, especially with the venue and the fort in the background. Tim can tell you more directly than I, but folks come here from all over and just marvel at what we have. And I think, to some extent, to your point, Counselor, the more investment that's made in those ball fields to make them really state-of-the-art, probably the harder it would be for the federal government to say, yeah, we want to go a different direction, because that truly could become a national venue. Right? So I don't know if I answered all of that.
You
but
did. The only thing I would ask, that in the language that you sent back, where you stated that it basically said that if it's a mandated conveyance of the property, if we could just rework that so that it's provides the council a little more of a liberal approach to that, so it's not, the language doesn't say mandated, because I don't think it will be a mandated process. I think
Okay.
it will be at the discretion of whoever the council is at the time.
All right, great.
And I think we're also looking at a shorter time frame than people realized. The Study Act was required to be concluded within a period of 3 years, and that was signed in October of 2018. So we're looking at a recommendation, by October of this year. So it's a quick process. I think it's coming up very quickly.
Great.
So it doesn't mean the process will conclude at that point, but the recommendation from the Department of the Interior will be delivered to Congress at that point.
Very
So-
good.
so-
I'll work on that language and certainly provide a draft.
Okay.
And so certainly the intention to provide you all with the finished draft. We're extremely close, but we didn't want to delay this another cycle because we thought we were, we're very close with on a comprehensive agreement.
Yeah, in a perfect world, everything remains the same, just
Right.
with that added federal support, and
Yeah.
being part of the Park Service itself draws people. So it's a very positive thing to have that support, marketing, everything that comes along with it. It'd be great to see everything coexist the way it does now, but there's always the possibility that the federal government will come in and say, well, we think that X, Y, Z, and it's sort of a trade-off for that benefit, so. Just so
Understood.
that we're protected in the event that we have to make some changes or structural changes to the site.
Great.
So, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Counselor. I'd be interested in hearing from the Little League representative, Mr. Kerwin.
Thank you. Hi, Tim Kerwin, President of the Oswego Little League. Do you have questions of me on the federal?
No, I think we're good.
Yes?
Yep.
Okay.
No, I appreciate all the work you guys have done. I mean,
Okay.
you can really see the site has been really reinvigorated, and to see all the people using the facilities is good.
Okay.
I'm really happy to see that.
But with the federal question, I mean, we recognize that if that comes in, we don't know what's gonna happen, right?
Yep.
And we don't have control over it, you probably don't have control over it, so we do recognize that, so your question there, I think, is well put, but I think we've also looked at it and said, okay, if that happens, we all have to pivot, and we all have to figure out what we're gonna do at that point in time. We have heard that the federal government had come in different places and left Little Leagues in their place, so we have heard that, so hopefully, if that does happen here, that's something that will happen here as well. So, you know, that's with the federal thing, but I think, Your Honor and, you know, your city attorney had succinctly said what I could say, so I don't want to get into too long, but, you know, basically what we were looking at is getting a use agreement that we thought was there. I mean, everyone had always said, oh yeah, you got this agreement, this lease, it's for $1. I looked at it, I didn't find anything. I asked the city attorney, he didn't find anything. So it's just basically, as the mayor has been saying, is memorialize what we thought we had. This year, I don't know if it was pandemic and people were sick of it being inside, but so many people came out with dogs on the field, and I got called more names than I've ever been called in my life, and, you know, so be it. But I think it'd be a shame that one dog and one person would be able to stay on a field rather than 12 kids that are there with their uniforms and baseballs and bats and everything else. So that's really what we were looking at here. And I think as Kevin had indicated, you know, the big field, if you want to talk about it, is in total disrepair. It's almost dangerous at this point in time for people to play on. We've been trying to rectify it and putting Band-Aids on it. You know, we put in $20,000 in 2019 on the clay. Last year, we put about $5,000 to $10,000 in the clay. But that field really needs to be renovated, and it has to be renovated. It cost, our estimate is $85,000 right now, and that's all on us, not on the city, no city money, a donor, grants, those types of things. So that has to be done. And without this type of agreement, as was indicated, I don't think we're going to be able to get that commitment from people. But, I mean, just in the last 4 or 5 years, for mounds, we spent $12,500 on the big field, $7,500 on the majors field. T-ball field we put in so that the younger kids are playing on a field that's more respective of the younger kids. We were putting them on a field that the fences were 220 feet. And you have these kids that are 4 or 5 years old running out, they didn't know what they were doing. So we built a field dedicated to just T-ballers, 100-foot fence. So that's all it is. It's basically an infield with just, you know, a little bit of an outfield. That was $13,500 for the fencing and another $2,000 for the mound that we did just last year. We had to do some backstop repairs. That was $5,000 to $7,500 last year. Clay, we brought in last year 20,000 scoreboards, and the last year, big field's 12,500. The majors field was 7,500. And then McRobey Field, which people may know it as junior senior field, was 5,000. The batting cages that were put in 2-3 years ago were at a cost of about $75,000, and the equipment inside the batting cages are about $15,000. The big field, I already talked about that. The concession stand we put in for about $50,000, and a lot of these things we had loans on. We took out loans. Some of them were grants. Luckily, we were able to get a few grants, and a lot of them were donors. But that's really the majority. Last year, we converted the McRobey Field into a 50-70 field to allow for the kids. It's an intermediate field between the Little League field and the big field. That was a cost of about $35,000. We got most of that from a grant from Little League International. It only took me 2.5 to 3 years for them to finally say yes for it. So that was that. The McRobey Field renovation about 5 years ago was about $80,000. So, I mean, that tells you about the investment that we've put in. As Kevin said, we're trying to make it the best fields around. I mean, if people go there, you know, you got the backdrop of the horizon and the sunset. When the sunset hits, you got the fort, and then you got great fields. And we're trying to make them the best around. We're trying to have, you know, people involved in them that like it. Community members have said last year that if it wasn't for Little League, they wouldn't have had any normalcy in life because of the COVID and all, so that was nice to hear. And we just had a lot of people coming out. Hopefully it will continue. But thank you for your time. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Any questions, Mr. Kerwin? Yes, Counselor Walker.
I got one question. I don't know if it's for you or the mayor or our attorney. The agreement, I don't see a year. Are we gonna go 10, 20? I don't know.
Yeah, so, I apologize. The original, intention was, we were talking about maybe a 5-year agreement. We talked about a little bit more, the level of investment that Tim just mentioned is well into the hundreds of thousands of dollars. And to ensure that you've got a return on that investment, a longer term is appropriate. Little League's been there for over 50 years. I mean, many of us have played. And I don't think they're going anywhere absent the federal government saying something. So we thought that a 10-year agreement with 2 5-year extensions would be appropriate at this point in time. That secures that location for a period of about 20 years going forward. And, but certainly open to any other, any suggestions. The city owns the property, so we can really, enter into any type of reasonable agreement, with Little League in that regard.
Very good, thank you. I don't believe Little League's gonna go anywhere.
Been there since 1955, I think it's been.
I'd say go as long as we can, do that.
I'm for that.
Any other questions, Mr. Kerwin? I would like to say thank you on behalf of the council to you and the coaches and the volunteers who run this program. I truly, truly believe that our city is a much better place to live because of Little League and, hockey and soccer organizations. I mean, it just makes us such a great place to live and grow up.
Thank you,
So thank you.
thank you.
Anybody else? Seeing none? Can I have a motion, please? Counselor Burridge, Counselor Hill.
Counselor Coردino.
Yes.
Counselor McBroody.
Yes.
Counselor Hill.
Yes.
Counselor Plunkett.
Yes.
Counselor Burridge.
Yes.
Item number 6, Mayor William J. Barlow Jr. seeks favorable consideration by the Common Council to extend the lease agreement with the County of Oswego for use of Legends Field for a period of 5 years from January 1st, 2021 to December 31st, 2025 for annual rent of $1. Mr. Mayor?
Same story as Little League and just a simple continuation of what we started, actually you started, Counselor, back in 2017. Legends Field or Complex is owned by the county, just up off of, what's that road, Churchill?
Churchill.
Just off of Churchill Road, owned by the county, leased to the city. The county just renewed and extended that lease with the city, so we are extending our lease with Champions Events, who have run softball tournaments and really have done a nice job reviving that complex in the last few years and have brought an enormous amount of people, more than I ever thought, and have made a whole lot of progress up there. So, and it's the same story. They, as a private company, they're trying to eyeball the relationship between the county and the city and where the city's going and what the county has in mind, and before they really make any serious investment, more than they already have, they just want to know that the facility will be around and under their control for several more years to come. And anybody who has seen the participation numbers and the work they've done at the field knows that that's a really good thing for our community. And you see the hotels, restaurants, and small businesses here benefit from the influx of people when they host their tournaments. So I'm happy to bring this to you and ask for your support, and hopefully they keep making progress and keep the leagues going, particularly once we get through the pandemic.
All right, thank you, Mayor. Any questions or concerns for the mayor on this one? I just would like to piggyback on what you said, that I too was amazed on how everything turned around, because in 2017, before they were on board, we had 7 men's teams playing. And as you know, I mean, that was just unsustainable to put the DPW up there to fix fields, to maintain the equipment, and take care of it just for 7 teams. And that was down from a high of probably 125 teams 25 years before that. So, I mean, to me, it's just a total turnaround from 7 men's teams to last year, because of COVID, it didn't work out too well last year, but the year before, they had about 35 men and women's teams, and they had an assortment of youth softball and baseball tournaments there. One tournament had over 1,000 people. It was a national tournament, which, as you alluded to, filled up our hotels and restaurants. So I think this is, beyond my wildest dreams, a success. So I thank you for your support in the past 5 years on this.
Thank you, and thanks for hosting that original meeting and putting it all together. And I'd just like to thank Champions for doing a nice job. They've invested quite a bit, and also the county. You know, a lot of times you'll see underutilized or vacant land sit around for years and years and years, and as soon as somebody wants to do something with it, other people get bright ideas. And I think I appreciate the county, you know, even though it is being it's now a used facility and getting a lot of attention, they still support this agreement. The extension passed the county legislature 23-2, so I appreciate their support and look forward to extending this even beyond these next 5 years.
All right, thanks. Anybody else? Seeing none, can I have a motion, please? Counselor Hill, Counselor Plunkett.
Counselor Coردino.
Yes.
Counselor McBurney.
Yes.
Counselor Hill.
Yes.
Counselor Plunkett.
Yes.
Counselor Burridge.
Yes.
Item number 7, Mayor William J. Barlow Jr. seeks favorable consideration by the Common Council to enter into an agreement with the Oswego City School District for providing up to 2 school resource officers in accordance with provisions outlined in the attached agreement. Mr. Mayor?
This is a long-term relationship we've had with the school district in providing school resource officers in schools. So this agreement, nothing really changes. If you remember, I think a year or 2 ago, we increased it from 1 SRO to 2. We were happy to do that, and we'll continue doing that. A slight increase in the price because the previous agreement was based off of 2 police officers' salaries at base salary. They specifically request Sergeant Lori Berger because she does such a great job and has done it, so we just made that edit to have it reflect her salary as opposed to a base, which is fair. And basically the SRO provides school security, interact with the students. They even helped with some different COVID duties this year. It's a 40-hour-a-week job, so this officer, Officer Berger in this case, is dedicated to being the SRO. She's not out on patrol in off time when she's not in schools. That is her job. And she's also the juvenile officer for the police department, so it makes sense that she's the officer anyway. That's really a summary of the agreement. We'll pass it, and once we pass it, the school district will take a look, and I'm sure we'll approve it without issue.
All right, thank you. Any concerns or comments from the council on this one? Seeing none, can I have a motion, please? Counselor McBurney, Counselor Burridge.
Counselor Coordino.
Yes.
Counselor McBurney.
Yes.
Counselor Hill.
Yes.
Counselor Plunkett.
Yes.
Counselor Burridge.
Yes.
I think that was the last item on the agenda for this meeting. Is there anything else anybody needs to say on the council? Seeing none, can I have a motion to adjourn? Counselor Plunkett, Counselor Hill.
Counselor Coordino.
Yes.
Counselor McBurney.
Yes.
Counselor Hill.
Yes.
Counselor Plunkett.
Yes.
Counselor Burridge.
Yes.